Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live with the Pricing Lady. I'm Janine Liston, your hostess, and today we're going to be talking about how employees make awful entrepreneurs. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show, especially my guest for today, Delphine Wolf. Welcome, Delphine.
Thank you, Janine. How are you?
I'm very good and thrilled to have you here with us today. Delphine, why don't you start by introducing yourself to the audience?
Okay, so I'm Delphine. I'm originally from the northeast of France, and I moved here to Switzerland like 15 years ago, even more. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And I'm a holistic coach. I'm a supervisor and trainer, and I work with private individuals as well as for big and small companies.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show with me here today.
It's a
Delphine and
pleasure.
I met through EntNest, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
For those of you who aren't familiar with EntNest, it's a platform, a social media platform for entrepreneurs. I'll pop that link into the chat below. As you all know, this show is all about getting pricing right in your business. So when Delphine and I sat down and had a chat about what we want to talk about in the show, we thought, what a great opportunity, because one thing we both had in common was we shifted from being employees to entrepreneurs. So why don't we start, Delphine? You can tell us a little bit about what you were doing when you were in the corporate or in the employee side
Mhm.
of things and how that led to your transition.
Okay, thank you. So I started my career first in tourism because I was good in languages and I really liked the contact and all that. And I did that for a few years. And then I was living in Paris and I needed to find a job. And I ended up working for a big international company. And I liked it. And I did 15 years in this company working in the tax area. So, and I grew and then I was a manager. So really I did a long career there in France and then in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, I was feeling that maybe the values didn't suit me as much as I used to as I grew older, and I wanted to change. And I found a coach to help me, and that's how my whole thinking started. And I decided to become a coach myself and to do it as an independent person.
Okay. And so you said that the values, what you were experiencing in your job as an employee wasn't really aligned, or you felt maybe there was some sort of misalignment there in terms of what you wanted. So how did that then transition into you really starting your own business? What were you looking for?
Um, well, I think I was looking to do really what I wanted in a way and to have more freedom because, especially when you grow into the management and you kind of behind the really up in between the upper management and your staff. And with the staff, everything was going well. But then with the upper management, I didn't always agree. And then I had to bring down some decisions, which I didn't fully agree with. And yeah, it made me feel uncomfortable sometimes. And as a coach, I must say, I never really thought I would be an employee. It was kind of obvious if I become a coach, I'm just going to do it on my own, and I'm going to be free. But what's really interesting is that I think 2 years before I started, I would never ever have imagined becoming an independent. I always thought it wasn't for me. So.
Uh-huh. Why do you think that wasn't, why do you think you thought that? Because I think a lot of people who are employees, they toy with the idea of having their own business, but then they say, no, 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 that's not for me. Why do you think you thought that?
It's hard to remember at the time, but I would believe it's something to do with security.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking that it's true, I've always needed security and it was quite strong. And I think that's probably the main reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, I always tell people, I stood at the edge of the entrepreneurial cliff for quite a long while, peeking over the edge, but not
Mm.
daring to, not daring to take the leap. And for me, also, there was an aspect of security. I would
Mm.
say
And I
was a
think it's
similar
probably
thing.
also, sorry, I
Mhm.
have interrupted you, sorry. It's probably also because depending on your context and your culture and people, your family. And in my family, there are only employees. Amongst my friends, there were only employees. So it's also something that, that wasn't very familiar. So it didn't even really enter my mind for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Delphine, why is it, because we had this conversation about why employees make such bad entrepreneurs. I'm curious as to why do you feel that that's, a statement that we can actually make?
So repeat the statement for me.
That employees make awful entrepreneurs.
It's probably because there's such a big shift between being an employee and being an entrepreneur. And I think it's also the way you look at money and at income. And so whatever you do as an employee, your income comes at a certain date in the month. And even when you feel you were not such a good employee that month, it's still coming in. And yeah, it's for me, it's really how I value income and money, which was different. And suddenly you become an independent, and okay, so income is much more different. You have to, the way you earn it is really different.
Yeah.
And you have so many things also that you need to do, that you need to know, that you don't know. So you don't, it's okay. I had competencies as a coach because I had done my certification, but you need lots of other competencies, which I wasn't really aware of or didn't really want to see maybe before I started.
Yeah. Very true. I always say that, I thought that starting my own business was a career journey, but it's actually a personal journey more than a career journey. Yeah. And
Exactly.
I didn't understand that fully before I started.
Yeah. So you did also a lot of personal development, I guess.
Yeah. Always. Always. Yeah. So Delphine, when it comes to say, topics like selling yourself and pricing what you offer, things like that, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you started with that and what you felt, how that went for you, and how that's evolved with time?
Mm-hmm. So what was good when I started is, even as a student in coaching, we were really encouraged to, at half of the training, we were encouraged to start billing our services, even if it was a low amount. So I really remember super well the first bill of 50 francs that I received. My first paid coaching session, and I was so excited with my 50 francs, which is not a lot of money, okay, but still very exciting. And then so you get a little bit already, accustomed to billing. But then when of course, my prices grew and grew and grew, but I always have had in mind, and I still have it a bit, that it's more difficult for me because in a way I sell myself. Because if you sell a product, you can, that's my belief, you have a little bit more distance. But in coaching, in a way, okay, it's my coaching skills, but still it's me as a person, and people will, take coaching with me because they like me, or because, whatever, they have a good feeling. And so I think that was the tough part, because how much do you value yourself? That was a big question for me.
It's true. I mean, I think there's a big component of it. I see it both in both sides, but more in service, where it has to do with worthiness and how you see yourself. And one thing I talk to my clients about quite often is that actually it's not you; it's how you help people get results. So it's actually the result that they're paying for,
That's
which can give
true.
you a little bit of distance from them. Because as
Mhm.
a coach, I'm sure you realize this, that the results, you're usually based highly on what the client does as opposed to what you do, right? So
That's
you
true.
guide them and lead them along the way, but ultimately they have to do the work that gets them the results that they're looking for. You're kind of like the
Yes.
tour guide, if you will.
Yes. And at the same time, we always say, or I always say in coaching, that I'm not responsible for the results. I'm responsible for the process. and the person is responsible for the results. So, it's also a way to take a bit of distance, because if the people are not engaged, or for reason or another something comes up in their life and they're not really doing what they should do, then the results don't happen.
Right. No, very true. And so
And it
if you were, yeah, go ahead. Did you have a
and
follow-up?
it also really helped me when I started packaging a little bit my services, because initially I was, per session, it's this amount, and now with the packages, it's sessions, but it's other things I offer, little special bonuses in the package. And
Right.
for me, it makes much more sense to sell it like that.
Yeah. So when did you make that transition from sort of charging by the hour to having
About 2 or 3 years after I started.
Okay.
When I invested in some help from a consultant, helping female entrepreneurs, and it helped me quite a bit.
Yeah. So I had a gentleman, Walter Esser, on the show a few weeks ago, and we were talking about pricing for coaches specifically. He was also a big proponent of packages. So I'm
Good.
glad to hear consistency in that, because I think it's a very strong message. I mean, people are paying for your experience and your skills and your know-how. Not the time is just the wrapper, as I say. The time is the wrapper that you deliver it in.
Exactly.
It's not where the results are driven by that necessarily.
Yeah. And also something that is not easy, I think, in my business is the difference in pricing depending on whether you're selling to a private person, whether you're selling to a small company, or whether you're selling to a big company. And this is also because, I always want to be fair to me, and fair to the client. And then, is the fairness different according to, how much the client can pay? So yeah, it raises, when I was thinking about it earlier, it raises quite a lot of questions. Yeah.
Yeah, it can. I agree. Fairness is one of those things in pricing that is, people say all the time, but is often implemented very poorly. um, what's, I think, more important is to think about the value that it brings, right? And depending on who's purchasing and who's extracting the value from it, there are different benefits and different results that people can get from that. And therefore that may warrant having different prices. But yeah, I know some coaches struggle with, how to differentiate for different groups. How have you dealt with that?
Well, I think I try to follow more or less the market and ask questions around me, colleagues, coaches, and because, with private people, I feel it's fair what I'm billing. It's fair. I think it's fair for them. It's fair for me. It's not outrageously expensive, but still, I think it's okay for me what I get. And then when I started, working for companies, so because some are really small, startups and just a few employees, and I couldn't imagine myself, billing the same thing as I would bill to a really huge international firm. So I just started to ask around what other people would do, and then that's how I found my way. But it's true that, prices are always different than from one client to another.
Right. Well, and I mean, one way to deal with that is to offer different types of packages for different target groups. So the package that you offer a startup might be different than what you offer to a bigger company, and therefore different pricing looks relevant. I think where people get into trouble quite often is they try to have different prices for the same offer. And then, of course, then that can backfire if you're not careful, if customers start speaking with one another.
Yeah, it's true. I like what you say. Just more working on the offer itself. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, that's what big companies do, right? So they have Cheerios, and then they have Honey Nut Cheerios, and they have other kinds of Cheerios, and these, they have different kinds of Cheerios. It's probably a bad example. I haven't had cereal in ages. I know there's at least two kinds. Oh no, there's multi-grain Cheerios, but they price them differently. Yeah. They're targeted towards slightly different groups. I would guess the whole wheat ones or the whole grain
Mm,
ones are a little bit more expensive because they're
mm,
targeted towards, an audience who's looking for a healthier diet, if you
mhm.
will.
Yeah,
And so, there's examples all over when we pay
it's
attention about
true.
how people are doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And like you say, even with products. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
quite interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also offer and demand because whoever is going to buy it will be willing to pay more or not, and
Right,
it's interesting.
right, right. So, when you think about your own journey with selling yourself, as you made that transition from employee into entrepreneur, what was that like for you?
It was not in French we say long fleuve tranquille, so it was not like steady path. But very, as you said before, very full of learnings and full of personal development. Already becoming a coach is, it's included that you're going to do personal development, but also I think whatever the field you're in, you really work a lot on yourself when you become an entrepreneur. And I learned skills in very different areas. Like we were saying offline before, it's just, you need to be a marketer, a seller, someone who's good at accounting and just,
Right.
network, LinkedIn and whatever. So it's, I think I grew really immensely
Yeah.
doing this,
Yeah,
this
unless you can
path.
outsource those kinds of things, then you have to take those on at least for some time. There's a really great book called The E-Myth. I forget the name of the author, but I'll post a link to it in the comments below. So the E-Myth is called the entrepreneurial myth, the E-Myth, and it's about how the bricklayer one day says, "I can do this better than my boss. I quit." And goes and starts his own business. But
Mm.
at that point in time, he doesn't realize that he's got to do the bookkeeping and the marketing and the selling. He doesn't just get to lay brick and do what he loves. And so I find that it's a wonderful book, very easy read, and it brings a lot of value. And I find that to be a very true
Mm.
statement.
Yeah, it's great. It's true, and it's true. It's especially at the beginning. Then, of course, you get known and you have more income, and then you can outsource. But I think for most people, the first few years, you have to do a lot on your own.
On your own, right? But it's a good learning. I mean, I am personally, I'm one of those people. I like to know how to do something before I hand it
Mm.
off to someone else.
Yes, me too.
So we're going to start wrapping it up now. And I had planned to ask you one question, but I'm going to ask you a slightly different question because what advice would you give somebody who is an employee now and they're thinking about starting their own business? What sort of advice would you have for them so they're not that awful employee?
Well, first advice, don't listen to the ones that tell you it's too risky and too dangerous, because we were talking about that this morning, that in Switzerland, people tend to tell you how risky it is instead of encouraging you. So don't listen to those. That's the first advice. And then maybe second, something I would have done differently, I think, because I started investing in help in 2017. So 2 years and something after I started. And I think I would have started probably earlier, because with investing in someone to help me, with
Yes.
entrepreneurship and all that, because I started very naively, and in a way it was great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I'd known what was coming, maybe I would have asked for some consulting or advice earlier, just to avoid some of the mistakes I did.
And I think that that's a very important point because a lot of people who are employees now who end up starting their business, they come from being an employee with some money there, right? So there is some
Exactly.
capital to make small investments with.
Yeah.
And one of the best investments I agree you can make is having a business coach or joining a startup program or something
Mhm.
like that, where you get support and you get to learn from people who have been there and done that before.
Yeah, I think it's, but other than that, I think even though it was not easy, I think it's probably the path I had to be on, and it was full of learnings, as I said, so all good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Number from today's show.
I think maybe what we said just before is that being, for example, being an independent coach or an independent consultant, whatever it is not just being that, it's not just being a coach, it's being lots of other things. And maybe just, if you're aware of it, it can help you that there are lots of other things and you will not be always enjoying, just your job. There's lots of other things around it.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. No, that's important, and it's good to keep in mind as well. Yeah. Okay, Delphine, if people would like to know how they can get in touch with you, find out more about what you do with people, where can they reach you?
So my website, unfortunately, is only in French, so they can reach me on LinkedIn to have the English version of my profile, and for French speakers, the website delphicoach.ch.
Very good. So I'll also put that link into the comments below so that everybody has it when they come back to watch the replay. Delphine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Janine.
I appreciate having you here. I'd also like to thank the audience for watching and joining us for the live show today. So thank you so much to all of you who have been here.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine, for the opportunity.
Yeah, you're very welcome. For those of you who are interested in doing more with your pricing, I have a webinar coming up. If you go to JanineListon.com, you can find details about the 5 Steps to Pricing Success webinar. I will also put that link. I've got a lot of links to put in the comments today. I will also put that link in the comments below so you can join me. The first one is going to be October 1st next week. And we'll be on a Zoom call for that webinar. So please go ahead and join me. I would love to see you for the 5 Steps to Pricing Success. That's what we have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you all the best. And as always, enjoy pricing. Bye, everyone.
Bye.